Wake up, you've got the power. You've got my people in the east, yo, you gotta wake up. Midwest, dirty South, yo, you gotta stand up. All my homies in the west, yo, you gotta wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up.
All right, thank you for coming to our presentation, Teaching Music Through an Equity Lens. This is a little glimpse of our agenda for today. We're going to start off with Mariah talking about cultural proficiency and inclusion. So here she goes.
So cultural proficiency and inclusiveness in Austin ISD is a research-based conceptual framework that centers on an understanding of who you are, your background, values, biases, and beliefs, and the impact your identity has on your daily work with students, staff, and families. Established in AISD in 2010-11, it is led by Dr. Angela Ward, Babu Blakes, and Sarah Freund. The CP&I office recently held a principal series over the summer, so please be prepared for conversations about this work in your school and classroom. I have on here the link and the website to the page, and from here you can see any of the PDs that may be offered and their newsletter, which has a lot of great information on the work they are currently doing and future work they will be providing. And I'd also like to encourage you to look at some of the asynchronous lessons that are offered during our PDs, because some of them are actually part of the equity work that CP&I office is being involved in.
Okay, before we get started with this presentation, I just want to go through some agreements and some norms for the meeting. So before we get started, I just want to go through and make sure that everybody is staying engaged. There's going to be moments that we'll be engaging in more heavier topics, and if you need to take a break, feel free to pause during this video and take a moment to recollect yourself before continuing on. We ask that you, when you're having conversations with other people about our topic today, that you are speaking your truth respectfully. We want to have authentic conversations with everybody that we speak to about equity, but we just ask that you please be respectful to everybody who you're talking to. We encourage questions or thoughts that you may have during the session, and later on, if you need to contact one of us that are presenting today to ask any questions, you are more than welcome to. We'll have a very specific link for you to do so. Next thing, you're probably going to feel some discomfort today during the session. That's normal, and we hope that you take a deep breath and self-reflect. You're probably going to feel some cognitive dissonance or discomfort with some of these ideas, and so you should pause, reflect, and ask yourself why. Expect and accept non-closure. We're just in the beginning steps of engaging in conversation regarding equity in the music classroom, and therefore it's going to be a growing experience with many more opportunities to learn and grow as we educate ourselves on these matters. This isn't the final step, and we accept that we will keep adding on to this conversation.
Okay, in just a moment, I will have you pause your video so that you can read this slide, which is the Cultural Proficiency Continuum. When you're reading through it, take a moment to think about where you are without any self-judgment or self-criticalness. Go ahead and pause your video now so you can read it.
We're going to just take 3 very slow breaths because as Victoria said, this work is challenging and you might experience some discomfort. So we're just going to very slowly breathe in and breathe out 3 times at your own pace. Find a comfortable spot for your hands If you put your hands here and you give yourself a little hug, that's a great oxytocin release, and that can help you to feel even more comfortable. So let's just try it together. 3 breaths.
So right here we have our equity portion, and I'm sure most of us have seen this picture before. And this picture is demonstrating the differences between equality and equity. And equity and equality are often confused for each other. Equality has to do with giving everyone the same exact resources, whereas equity involves distributing resources based on the needs of the recipient. Keeping in mind these two definitions, I want to share our district's definition of equity. Austin ISD's definition of equity is adapted from the National Equity Project. Educational equity means that each child receives what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential. To understand the importance of equity, we must first define racism. So, what is racism? When most people look up the word racism, they'll find a definition on the lines of this. Racism is typically described as the prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. On the surface, this definition can appear to be accurate and includes all of the necessary components of racism. But this definition mainly addresses overt racism and neglects the systemic effects that racism has in our society. The marginalization and/or oppression of Black, Indigenous people of color based on socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. In order to combat racism, we must start by acknowledging and understanding the historical perspective of racism and understand the impacts of our racist foundings. Here are some examples of understanding inequities from a historical perspective. Black people were initially denied the right of an education. Learning or teaching Black, Indigenous people of color to read or write was criminalized. The number of Black educators and school leaders plummeted after Brown versus Board of Education decision. This affected generations and generations of Black, Indigenous people of color, and we're still seeing the effects of this today. After the United States was established in 1776, very little was done to advance the rights of students with disabilities. Legislation to ensure equal educational opportunities for special education began in the early 1970s. This was only about 50 years ago. It's important to understand the need of historical reflexivity that requires us to look at the historical roots of inequities in order to solve the problem. Now, keeping the historical perspectives in mind, we need to talk about vocabulary. Vocabulary is so important to stay on top of. This is because vocabulary is dynamic and always changing. The meaning of words may change and evolve based on context because language is always evolving. Here are some examples of topics to keep in mind. The acronym BIPOC. This acronym stands for Black, Indigenous people of color, and this is more inclusive. Use person first language. So if you're describing someone, for example, a student with autism, notice that I said a student with autism and not my autistic student or student with dyslexia. You want to emphasize the person first. Take time to know how a person identifies. For example, Black versus African American, Hispanic versus Latino, Latina, Latinx, gender pronouns, gender. Make sure that you're keeping in mind how a person identifies. And also when you're using informal speech, which may include but not limited to microaggressions. So microaggressions are indirect expressions of racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, or any form of prejudice. They can be seemingly innocent comments from people who might be well-intended. However, they may make a person feel different, violated, or unsafe. And here I have some examples of some microaggressions, and I'm not going to read through each one, but these examples are something to keep in mind. And what they are, they're broken into a theme, what the microaggression is, and the message behind the microaggression. And I'll read a few. So the theme of the one I'm going to read is colorblindness, statements that indicate that a person does not want to acknowledge race. So the microaggression is, when I look at you, I don't see color, or America is a melting pot, or there is only one race, the human race. And what this microaggression does is denying the person of their racial ethnic experiences, and it's lumping everyone into the same groups. Another example is the denial of individual racism, a statement made when people deny their racial biases. For example, I'm not racist, I have several Black friends. Or another example is, as a woman, I know what you go through as a racial minority. Or, I grew up poor, so I can relate on how it feels to be a minority. And what these microaggressions are saying is, I'm immune to race because I have friends of color, or your racial oppression is no different than my gender oppression or class oppression, or I can't be racist, I'm like you. And then here's an example of using informal speech as a microaggression, saying things like Indian giver, or that's so gay, or I was gypped. These are things that you want to stay away from. But also, if you hear these in your classroom, you want to address it to help break the cycle. And that's the important key to this. And here we have Austin ISD Equity Office and their framework. And this is a list of what they do, and it's a brief list of what they do and what they're working on. Go ahead and pause the video and take a minute to look over this, and the link is also provided here.
Okay, now we're going to take a moment to reflect on all the information we've already been presented. So go ahead and take a deep breath. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and write, draw, or sketch the statement on the screen. So my name is blank, and I identify as blank. This work is important to my students because blank. Give yourself a minute or two to write and reflect on that statement.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about equity in the curriculum, repertoire, and teaching processes. I'm going to start with what to be wary of, and then I'm going to talk about the best practices in your classroom. So I'm going to just jump straight into it. We are living in a time and age where social media is huge, and you can tell a person's personality and what they value based on what they're posting on social media. So right now, as you are starting the year and you're trying to select music for your students, or trying to use different resources from different people, be wary of composers who don't reflect your values. So an example of that would be recently Patty DeWitt came to light for being racist and xenophobic. And so you want to be mindful that the people that you are looking up to as role models or using their resources or choosing them to, choosing their composed works for your classroom, that they need to reflect how you are as a teacher and your students. So when talking about teaching strategies, we want to focus more on the what instead of the how, and you can do that by using differentiation between your classes. No same class is the same. You will have some classes who desire more structure, and then you'll have other classes who desire more creativity and freedom. So taking the time to build a relationship with your students at the very beginning of the year can be very fruitful for you in the classroom. By developing this relationship, you can figure out the vibe of your classroom. So you may have one class that really needs more of that structure and they need to, be more calm. You might have a class who wants more calming music when they're doing certain things, more mindfulness, more SEL practices. And then you may have some classes who desire to be more fluid and have more movement and more activities that have them up and down instead of sitting. There's other ways too to differentiate between students. Even within the class, you'll notice that there's certain students that are fast learners and there's other students who need more time. And so again, by getting to know your students one-on-one, not just the class, but each student, you can build that differentiation into your class and that will help you. So be wary that you don't treat each class the same. Let's talk about cultural awareness. A big hot topic right now on Facebook has been whether or not to use chopsticks as a way of using for rhythm sticks in the classroom. And so I'm just going to go ahead and say right now that chopsticks and using them as a rhythm stick is not okay. It's offensive to many different cultures who consider the chopstick to only be used for dining purposes only, to only be used for eating, and to use it as something else is offensive to that culture. So just be mindful that if you're using different materials in your classroom, especially if you're creating those, take-home kits, that you are being mindful not to use something that for certain cultures could be deemed as something special. So let's talk about the best practices. So Mariah talked a bit earlier about cultural proficiency and inclusiveness, and I want to talk about how you can continue your education on that. Later on, we're going to have a resource page in this presentation, which will help you get to know what kind of books, podcasts, different things that you can look at to help you with your education. There's also cultural responsiveness classes that you can take. You can also read Zaretta Hammond's book on this. This is a good first step in learning about cultural responsiveness. And again, you'll learn more about that in a little bit, but continue your education. That's going to help you become a better teacher. Now, you can learn from Culturebearers. They're your most amazing resource that you can get. They're going to be able to validate whether or not a certain song you're using is authentic to that culture. You can use many different Culturebearers from around your area. You have parents that you can go and ask. You have different colleagues. You have people in the community, band members that you may know who would be more than willing to help you with selecting repertoire that is authentic, asking certain questions about a culture. But you're going to hear more about that later in another slide about how you first need to make a relationship with these Culturebearers. So we'll talk more about that later, but just know that you have this abundant, amount of Culturebearers in the world that you can speak with to help you be more culturally responsive. So you can analyze your teaching practices. Again, we talked earlier about differentiation, making sure that you know that each class is not the same and treating your students as individuals as well. You can also talk about teacher language. If you have attended responsive classroom training, they talk a whole lot about this. And there's a lot of books out there that talk about how you speak to students will reflect how you are as a teacher and how well you are teaching to your students. And so reflecting on that is going to help you become a better teacher. And also, really important, obtaining student feedback. Right now, we're working online for a bit. And you can do this, online or in person, but it's really important to get student feedback. You can do that by doing, a Google survey. You can do it by doing a poll. You can do it on Blend by asking a question, doing discussion posts. But getting to hear back from your students individually about whether or not they liked your lesson, did they find something that was, enlightening to them, something new. Getting to know how they felt about what you're teaching is really important. And it'll help you as a teacher because you're going to be teaching to your students something that they can actually take back with them. So with that being said, you can self-reflect on your teaching. So in person, this will be a lot easier because you can get permission to film your students, and you can, put a camera in the back of the room, another recording device, and you can record yourself and actually get to take a really deep look at how are you teaching? How are you speaking to your students? Were you differentiating? Do you have a lot of up and down movement? Do you have your kids just sitting down the whole time? Are you in one spot? Are you moving? You can look at all these different things as you record yourself. You can, right now, as we're online, you can still record yourself, but you have to do it not online like on Zoom. That's not okay because of FERPA laws. But you can record yourself by using another device like your phone and capture your voice, but you can't capture the video. So right now, there's still ways that you can reflect on your teaching. And last but not least, for best practices, choose repertoire that reflects your students. So I love this analogy about how you can create windows and mirrors for your students. So you can create a mirror into your students' life by taking a look at their culture and going, hey, I want them to see themselves in my class. So I'm going to find music that is going to mirror their culture. So you create this mirror for them. But then you create windows for those students, for other cultures within the class. So you have other peers in the class who have different cultures. So students are not only getting a mirror into their own culture, but they're getting the windows into other cultures that are not their own and learning from each other. And this will create more compassionate students and more understanding between peers as well, because they'll understand that their cultures are important for these reasons and whatnot. All right.
All right, so Victoria's talked about a lot about what to do, and there's a lot of research involved in making that switch, but something to know is that our students are worth it. So take the time, and once you get started, it gets easier and easier. You know your go-to resources, you know what's been verified, and you know some of the things to look for, some of your little red flags. So some of the places to start. Victoria mentioned finding a culture bearer, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Make sure you've got the oldest source possible, because in the song collections that were created for teachers, they left out some verses that may have had harmful language. Again, find all the verses and make sure if it's another language that you have a really good translation, because even in other languages, we found some songs that are a little iffy. Some great resources are the Lomax Archive, culturalequity.org. And the thing I love about this resource is that along with the song, you have the performer giving context. They'll tell you when it was used, who they learned from it, if it's a family song, sort of the history of their family. And they also have a lot of videos. So that's a really fun historical snapshot. The Library of Congress is another great resource. And if you're having trouble finding good information about a song, there's a feature called Ask a Librarian, and you can submit and ask for information about it, and they prioritize educators. Smithsonian Folkways is another fabulous resource. They have a lot of American folk songs, but they also have great collections from other cultures around the world. And if you're just getting started, they have lesson plans with a lot of information already built for you. Now, this last piece is a document that was put together by Lauren McDougall, who works for the American Kodai Institute. And she has gone through and researched a lot of the folk songs that we've been using in our teaching for years. And in this document, she links to original versions and any articles documenting why we might not want to use some things. And there are some things that we definitely don't want to use. So if you're someone who's heard that we're not supposed to use certain songs, but you need to know why, this is your place to go. It's constantly being updated and reorganized. So you might want to make a link to it for yourself so that you can go back and check once a month, see what's new. So now let's talk about the culture bearer piece. So when we're talking to people in our community or reaching out to people around the world for information about songs, we need to make sure that we've got a relationship with that person first, that it's mutually beneficial for us, that we've had anti-racist conversations with them, that they know that our goal is to uplift. We need to make sure that we're not tokenizing or placing any undue emotional burden or unwanted burdens such as time consumption on our Black, Brown, Asian, and Indigenous people of color. We need to make sure that we give context and keep the dialogue open with anyone that we're seeking advice from. We need to understand that these culture bearers are not the spokesperson or representative for their entire culture. Each person's experience is different. And when you're doing this, you can ask if there's anything specific that they want for you to share or contribute on their behalf with your students when you're presenting their information. And one thing we really need to make sure that we're not doing is using their opinions to justify our anti-racist work. This is not performative, it's collaborative. And we have some great games from Vanjie that sort of reflect all of these pieces of work we've been talking about.
Hi everyone. So when you are meeting with your classes on Zoom, you want to be in gallery view, and don't force your students right off the bat to show their camera due to privacy. But when you have your Zoom windows, you can see each other's faces and work together. The first song I'm going to show you is called Sorida. It's from Zimbabwe, and it's great for second grade when you're introducing Do, or maybe you want to have it as a game for beginning third grade. And so we're going to use our box that you see. And so at the very beginning, we're going to have our hands up at the top, and we're going to be circling around and clapping at the bottom. Here we go, Sorida, Sorida. Great. And then the next part, let me see, Rida, the back of your hand is facing your boxes. Rida, and then you flip your hands over. Ready? Let's add that. Go back to the beginning. Here we go. Sorida, Sorida. Rida, Rida, and we do it again. Sorida, Sorida, Rida, Rida. Great job. The second part, I have two different ways. Normally in a classroom, you would have a partner and you would clap with them. So I'm going to show you two different ways for Zoom. The first one for da, 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 we're going to clap our hands. And then I'll show you an alternate version. And this part's moving a little faster. Here we go. Da, 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 da. And then back to our Rida. Rida, Rida. Let's do that again. Da, 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 da. Rida, Rida. Excellent job. Now for that part, you can also, if you prefer, go out to the side for da, da, da. Here we go. Da, 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 re, da, 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 re, da. Excellent. All right, we're going to put the whole thing together one time with the clapping in the middle for the second part, and the second time out to the side, and then you and your students can decide which version you like better. Here we go. So, re, da, so, re, da, re, da, re, da, so, re, da, so, re, da, re, da, re, da, 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 re, da, 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 re, da, and back to the beginning of the version. Here we go. So, re, da, so, re, da, re, da, re, da, so, re, da, so, re, da, re, da, re, da, 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 re, da, 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 re, da. Great job. I forgot to mention that this is, which Lorraine will show you later, is on our sources page, is from Let Your Voice Be Heard. Our next one is from Step It Down, which is a great resource. So I highly recommend that one. This is a great one for low la and low so, and a lot of our third grade songs you're going to find have become problematic. So this is a great one. I've forgotten about it until doing the research, and I'm so excited to bring that one back. You can also bring it back in beginning of fourth grade as a review, and this is great for movement. All right, so we're going to touch our head and our shoulders, and instead of the crossing that we would normally do, we're going to go out to the side with our partners. Here we go. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, head and shoulders, head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Let's go to our knees and ankles. Here we go. Knees and ankles, baby, 1, 2, 3. Knees and ankles, baby, 1, 2, 3. Knees and ankles, knees and ankles, knees and ankles, baby, 1, 2, 3. What about ankles and toes? Here we go. Ankles, toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. Ankles, toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. Ankles, toes, ankles, toes, ankles, toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna milk our cow. Here we go. Milk our cow, baby, 1, 2, 3. Milk our cow, baby, 1, 2, 3. Milk the cow, milk the cow, milk the cow, baby, 1, 2, 3. Let's throw the ball. Here we go. Throw the ball, baby, 1, 2, 3. Throw the ball, baby, 1, 2, 3. Throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, baby, 1, 2, 3. And this is also a great one to get ideas from your class. So I'm going to steal Katie's from the other times we've done this, and then maybe we'll take one more new one, and then we'll end it. Here we go. Shake your booty. Here we go. Shake your booty, baby. 1, 2. Shake your booty, shake your booty, shake your booty, baby. 1, 2, 3. All right. Does anybody have a new one they want to try? I see Loren thinking really hard. Oh,
Pop the balloon.
What was it?
Pop the balloon.
Pop the balloon. Oh, I like that one. Here we go. Pop the balloon, baby. 1, 2, 3. Pop the balloon, baby. 1, 2, 3. Pop the balloon, pop the balloon, pop the balloon, baby. 1, 2, 3. And when you're done, that's the end, baby. 1, 2, 3. That's the end, baby. 1, 2, 3. That's the end. That's the end. That's the end, baby. 1, 2, 3. Great job. All right, this next one is from Jamaica. Called Shake the Papaya Down. It's great for syncopation when you're gonna find in 4th and 5th grade that the canoe song in Land of the Silver Birch is problematic, and you'll find more about that when you do your research. But I learned half of the song. I didn't realize it is a longer song. So I encourage you to look up the whole song, use it as a partner song. I've seen choral arrangements, but I'm going to show you part of it. And so we're going to keep our steady beat. My hands are like that, okay. On the bottom of your little box. Here we go. And Mama says no play, this is a work day. Up with the bright sun, get all the work done. If you will help me climb up the tall tree, shake the papaya down, great job. And then, I've been sitting a while, so I want to stand up. Oh, there we go. I want to stand up, and we're going to put the beat in our feet. Here we go. And Mama says no play, this is a work day. Up with the bright sun, get all the work done. If you will help me climb up the tall tree, shake the papaya down. Great job. All right, now normally, I would use this as a mixer at the beginning, and kids would get a new partner. However, we're not going to be able to do that for a while. So you're going to use your boxes again to relate to each other. The first part of the movement, it's going to be, you can't see my feet, but I'm putting the ta-dee-dee-ta-ta in my feet. I'll go first. Echo after me. My turn. Here you go. Awesome. Now I'm going to do that on my lap. Great. In my hands. Good. And then snapping. Great. We're going to put that all together, starting with our feet. Here we go. And great job. I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to repeat it, and I'm going to change something and see what I changed. Here we go. What did I change? At the end of the second time, normally this would be with a partner in the classroom, but for Zoom purposes, we're gonna tap our partners in our boxes. Let's do all that together. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I did this because those are 3 wrists there, and I want my students to feel that. All right, let's put the 2 parts together. Here we go. Great job. All right, we're going to add that to our song. So for the song, you can explore your space, my craft/music room, and then we will tap our friends to beside us. Here we go. And Mama says no play, this is a work day. Up with the bright sun, get all the work done. If you will help me climb up the tall tree, shake the papaya down, here we go. And yay, so I really like that one. That's a fun one. And if you find some other games that you're like, I don't know how to use this for Zoom, and you need some ideas, please reach out and we will see what we can come up with. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about some resources, and this will be, these are links, and so when you have the slideshow, all of the links will be clickable and they will take you places. So first I'm going to start with some repertoire books. This one just came out this year, First Steps in Global Music by Karen Howard. It is amazing. She has done a lot of work and research in finding really great songs to use from all over the world. Okay, El Patio de mi Casa. Many of you have this in your classrooms already, and it's by Gabby, we call her Gabby, Gabriela Montoya Steer from San Antonio, and she's come here to present a few times. There are lots of great songs in here. Let Your Voice Be Heard is where Banji did Sorida. It comes from Zimbabwe. This has songs from Ghana and Zimbabwe. There's a lot of amazing drumming patterns in here that if you have the right group, it would be really awesome. Let's see what I have. Step It Down. It's a great one. I don't have Arroz con Leche, but it's a great book as well. There you go. Thank you, Victoria. Okay, as far as non-music books, I have some lists that I linked here. All of these were curated this year, so they're really focusing on current events, but there are a few that have some materials with a focus on equity and Latino, Hispanic cultures and Indigenous cultures as well. And then some podcasts, Code Switch. It's all about this anti-racist work. There's a great episode from June called Why Now White People, and it really focuses on not just making this a fad that we're doing right now, but keeping up the work, and it's a little hard to listen to, but it's really great. Dear White Women has an episode about inequities in education, so I would definitely check that out. On these social media, these are all, the icons are links. So Austin Latino Coalition, Decolonizing the Music Room. There's also a website that's kind of like a blog. Decolonizing the Music Room is very active on their Facebook, and they do require a 1-month period of silence where you're just reading and listening and not commenting. And they have some things to go through, some little mini lessons before you are able to comment as well. And then Learning to be Anti-Racist is kind of a work in progress, but there's a lot of educators in there that are learning to be anti-racist together. Little Upbeat Class is a great Instagram diverse reads that she has a ton of books to use in your classroom with your students. Cody Raven, F. Willis Music, and then of course our own Dr. Angela Ward from Austin ISD CPNI department is very active on Twitter. And I suggest once you are following these people that you look to see who they follow, because then you will go down all these rabbit holes and end up following a million great people with amazing resources, and it's just learning every time you log on to your social media. And then I have some other links, Black-owned Austin area businesses. Black Pearl Books is right here in Austin. It's a Black-owned bookshop, so if you are looking at these non-music books and you decide you would like to purchase them, that would be a great place to go. Austin Justice Coalition, Indigenous Cultures Institute, the Texas Music Museum, they support a lot of Texas musicians from many different cultures. And then the Austin ISD Music with an Equity Lens resource folder that we have compiled it'll have this slideshow, a Google form that you can fill out, which I'll address in a moment, and a page with a ton of resources as well. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Thank you, Victoria. So next steps, we promise as a committee to continue this work and to hold brave spaces for difficult conversations regarding equity in music. So this is not just one presentation and we're done. The work is just being started. And we promise to do that, and we encourage you to join in along. We have a blend course set up. We're hoping that discussion panel is very active is the hope. And that if maybe you're a secondary choir or you're a band and you feel like you want to work with your own peer group, that would be amazing to do this work together. You can view the CP&I course offerings and monthly newsletter there when you click that link. And if you're interested, you can take implicit bias tests on that link. And if you have vetted repertoire suggestions or further wonderings about what we're doing, about everything we're talking about, you can submit them via the Google Doc or the Google thing that I was talking, the Google form, sorry, that I was talking about by selecting that link.
Again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to go to that Google form and ask us. We do know that this is a lot of information to take in, and we want to make sure that we can address anything that you have to share with us, whether that's a question or a comment. Thank you.
Pick one key thing you learned from today and what you will be working on for yourself before the next meeting or session. If you want to, hopefully we will be having discussion boards through the Blend course, and you can post maybe what you've come up with, what you are going to work on for yourself, and also see what other people have decided to do for themselves and read those, comment respectfully, and give yourself that, time to self-reflect. And yes.
All right, we want to thank you again for being here with us today. We are not done with this work. As it has been mentioned a couple of times in the presentation, we are going to have a Blend course that is called Music Through an Equity Lens. We would like for you to visit that Blend course as soon as it's live, hopefully the next 2-3 weeks. We're going to have discussion boards there. Again, this is time for not just elementary, but also secondary to get together, have conversations with one another, and continue this work, because this is just the beginning steps. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. Thank you again.